Okay, in this short video, just going to highlight some key features for doing lesson planning in PE. As we've been working on in class, the critical idea of the basic task model drives our lesson planning. So to get out the purposely worded task, we need to be clear about what is the application game that we think the task will facilitate the students doing. We can actually start off an application game if it's appropriate for the children. If not, exploring the use of certain movements would be key, leading towards some type of application game to make the task purposeful. When we do any type of refining, in the center here, we're thinking about body, so what moves. We're thinking about where, so spatial. The body moves either generally or in its personal space. Also, in relation to dynamics, such as the effort qualities, focused on how the body moves, so flow, time, weight. And also thinking of things such as relationship to other people, other equipment, space, that the application task will actually lead to. If at any time students are struggling, we think about simplifying it, using space, task, equipment or players, or extending the same idea. But the extending task always leads towards the application task. Key with the application task is it is some type of game. It could be a cooperative game or a competitive game. But there's a key aim the students are trying to do, and it's usually simple rules. And if you're playing a game with more than 2 or 3 people, the rules normally surround something around scoring, stop scoring, in-play rules and boundary rules. It's a good idea, as we've been playing in class, to think about how a scoring game may change the structure to that if the game becomes too one-sided, the game structure will change to make it more difficult for the winning person or team. So all in all, that's how you go from our basic test model, feed right the way through to the lesson plan that hopefully will help you be successful in your teaching. There we go. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. As we look at the model basic task, these key headings that are shown here really tell us to think about how we develop our tasks in class. And the wording becomes very important to actually get at the type of movement variety you're after, as students at different developmental levels will have different abilities. And as you're doing this, the conditions you create will give out the tactical awareness for the skill, like we did, for instance, with the grid game that worked back to the end-ball game. As this highlights here, you're always thinking about how you can extend or simplify the task as it leads towards some type of application that your refinements make sense. In any game you play, you try and consider what are the tactical problems that this game creates and what movements and skills address these problems. Then, increasingly, the task you teach your kids, especially when they've got grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, becomes purposeful because they feed back into these application games. So in class, we've worked on this little model that you will fit in to create your own games, and the highlight here just gives you an idea of what it is, the key things you should do. Critically, the game you play is what drives your lessons. And any lesson may end up having 2 or 3 different types of games depending on the age group of the students, but usually the introductory activity is individual or in pairs, a simple activity they can do that feeds into a more developed game that the main body of the lesson will enable the students to do. When you create the aim of the game, make sure you're considering is it a low organisational game or if it's a games category, and that game feeds into a broader sense of what games are about. The simple rules should always do something around scoring, starting and in play, and then you add on rules as situations arise. Tactical problems exaggerate things that the game brings out, and therefore these are the types of questions the teacher can ask to see if the kids can highlight it. So when we play the roll and run, what do you do when the ball is fielded to a space? If you're not fielding it, then you go to receive the ball from the fielder to try and get the ball back quicker than the batter can get back to home base. As you do the games, there are different off-the-ball movements, such as guarding and support movements, dodging. Those types of off-the-ball movements facilitate the ability to do on-the-ball skills. And as we've been talking about in class, until you get good at knowing where to go in the game, it's pretty pointless trying to manipulate objects if you're never going to be in the right place. We're getting very good at that at pickleball now, getting to the right place in the court. The other things that facilitate good questions from the teacher, a lot of you identified these, the space, time, force and risk. And these types of questions open up the games to students as they start to manipulate where to send the object, where to stand to cover the space, how to increase time themselves when in difficulty, or how to decrease time with the opponent in the game. and how much weight or force to put on an object in order to achieve the target or to get it to a person in time before someone else can intercept. And the risk is think about all those three things, but then combine them to actually try to outwit the opponent who may be doing the same thing to you, hence the dynamics of all games. The skill phases means any type of skill you do, be it a locomotive or a manipulative skill, you can break into 4 areas. And so always think of cues, body-wise, that happens just before you wind up to get the actual force to generate on an object and then recover back to start again. So always try and think of cues with those 4 phases in mind. And then when you do a task progression, as shown here, the task wording is critical, as you've noticed, with a different age group of the children, and the refinements are cues that you gradually introduce as the task gets more complex. And at the side here, you always have ways of extending or simplifying. And so this sort of diagram, if you fill it in, gives you a really good backbone to your lesson plans. Now, in constructing a lesson plan, I want you to use this outline in class to start off with, and we can develop this as you have experience teaching in the school. As you notice here, the learning intents around CAPS, this critical question is being asked of you. So what learning do you expect from the conditions you have created? That really is sort of imagining students engaging in the lesson with options so that they can actually develop their skills from where they're at. The other critical information here is the grade, your names, the number of students, the date and the time. All those logistics are needed. And then in this space here, you would think of what introductory activity you could do with the students that would warm them up but also prepare them for the main body of the lesson you're trying to do. And normally you want to do something you know it's more like a review and you're confident they can do. It normally involves some type of movement activity that gets them ready to do the manipulative tasks that come later in the lesson. Then each of these sections could represent a different application, game, if it's for younger children, or development of the game. And normally at the beginning here, you try as early as possible to get into some type of game structure. So the kids are either doing something against a target, how many in a row, or with a partner, working against a problem. And if they are skillful enough, they could even be playing a game with scoring and challenging each other. And as you note here, just as in the diagram, think of the extensions, implications, and then the critical cues, body, space, effort, relationship, that come down the side here. They explore the ability to do the skills effectively in the environment. And as you progress through that type of lesson plan, this could spread over 1 or 2 pages, but gives you enough detail as you come down this side here to think about what are the movement tasks and the management tasks that are needed to create those conditions. Think about grouping, about where to put equipment, how to get out equipment, where to put equipment when you've finished using it, what spaces you're using. All those things are part of the management, and as you've read in Rink and Wall and Murray, critical to making a lesson flow. Here's an example of lesson plan I completed for our first lesson at Brayford. As you can see, the CAPS has been developed, and where possible I've tried to use some type of adverb to describe what's going on in the lesson. I've also tried to word my tasks appropriately for the age group of the students and identify the correct cues I want to review. Then down the side here, I've tried to list intents to remind me what I'm trying to do in the tasks and then the extensions and the refinements. And as you can see, I've tried to break it down into sections that highlight the different phases of the lesson, but at the same time I'm including key elements that I can quickly scan to pick up on in case I lose track in my lesson. Management type things, grouping type things, all these are the type of things you need to include in your lesson plan. So the back of the lesson plan is really the common activity that you're trying to aim towards, so that would be the actual game, and then the closure questions you would ask students to check on their understanding of what you've been teaching. Closure is critical so you can build on that for next lesson, so think about how you might ask that question and what answers you're after. The evaluation piece here is actually what you want to know to yourself that helps you remember for next class what it is you need to do based on what the students actually did in your lesson. Critically for you, because this really helps in management, is to actually draw and think through how you're going to use the space in the gym. So this model here that I've given you helps you think about how to use benches or pylons or spots or hoops, and also locating students in there depending on how many students you have, how big the group's going to be for the games. But critically is how to use that space. You can either draw this using the online in Word, and it shows you on the Moodle how to do that, or you could just sketch it and then scan it and put in your lesson plan. But I want to see you draw it because that's one of the critical things to help you be successful in your lessons. Then this is what one looks like when it's done. Here's a culminating game to put together, evaluation, and then the drawing of the gym for the roll and run if we had to work in a small space with the 24 students we had to work with. That's the type of structure hopefully you'll be able to achieve. So,